It really makes you think, about how we often put creativity in like a separate box from our well-being.
Yeah, it's like art is over here, and then taking care of our mental and physical health is over there.
Totally. But this book we're diving into today, Using the Creative Arts in Therapy and Healthcare, even the title sparks a conversation.
Oh, absolutely. It's like they wrestled with whether to even put the word therapy in there.
And I think that hesitation really speaks to this idea that maybe engaging with our creative side isn't just a fun hobby, but it's actually deeply connected to becoming healthier and more whole as people.
Right, right. It almost makes you question that whole separation we tend to create. Like, what if art is actually a form of therapy in itself?
Exactly. And what's cool about this book is it's not just focused on one type of art, it's this huge exploration of all these different creative avenues.
Mhm.
We're talking movement, drama, the power of storytelling and folklore, even visual arts and music.
It's like it's offering us a whole toolkit of ways to connect with ourselves and the world around us using creativity as the key.
And what's really interesting is this updated version even brings in perspectives from around the world. It shows how artists themselves are getting involved in bringing comfort and relief to people who are suffering.
It really highlights this human need to express ourselves. The book describes it beautifully as the need to leave our own unique creative thumbprint on the world.
That image is so powerful, right? That each one of us, not just those who call themselves artists, has this deep down desire to express ourselves creatively.
Yeah, it's not about creating some masterpiece. It's more about that fundamental human act of saying, here I am, and this is what I want to share with the world.
So with that in mind, let's start with the visual arts. The book really dives deep into this idea of how engaging with visual art can create this quiet space, almost like meditation, for exploring what's happening inside us.
Yeah, and it makes sense that this could be especially helpful for people who maybe find other forms of art, the ones that require more outward expression, a bit overwhelming at first.
It feels very accessible too, right? You can grab a pencil and paper or even just make marks in the sand you're creating.
And the book really stresses that simplicity. It even gives some very practical tips on how to adapt visual art for people with different needs. Things like using Velcro to make it easier to hold a tool or adjusting soap bottles so they can easily squeeze out paint.
It's like they're thinking about how to remove any obstacle that might be in the way of someone expressing themselves creatively.
Right. And it's not just about the materials, it's also about the environment. The book really emphasizes the need for a peaceful, respectful space where people feel safe to explore and experiment without judgment.
And there are some pretty amazing stories in the book that show how powerful that can be. Like the person who hadn't spoken in a long time, and then during an art session, after weeks of just observing, they started talking.
Or the young man with disabilities who found so much confidence through his artwork that he wanted to put on an exhibition. It really shows how creating that supportive environment can unlock something incredible within a person.
So speaking of unlocking, the book then goes into specific visual art materials and what they can bring to the table. It starts with the basics, like a simple pencil.
Right, starting simple, like a familiar friend. But then they contrast that with charcoal, which they describe as a messy, breaking free experience.
Oh, I love that. That contrast really speaks to how different materials can meet us where we're at, you know, depending on what we're trying to express or explore.
Totally. And with charcoal, it's all about those intense blacks, the textures you can create using the side of the stick, smudging, even erasing. It's very tactile, very engaging.
And then they talk about oil pastels, which
Mhm.
seem to bring a whole other dimension of color and texture.
The book describes how you can keep layering oil pastels even if you feel like you're pushing right through the paper, and that freedom to explore, to build up the colors, that really stood out to me.
And of course, there's paint. I mean, who
Yeah.
doesn't love that feeling of mixing colors and seeing what emerges?
The book talks about the magic of mixing colors with watercolor or tempera and that feeling of accomplishment you get when you create something new in that way.
But it's not all about individual work,
Right.
right? There's also a whole section on how to use visual art in group settings.
One of the most interesting examples is the trust game they describe using oil pastels. Everyone contributes to a shared artwork, and then they blend it all together with turpentine.
I can see how that would really highlight the idea of everyone's contribution being equally important. It's like a visual representation of interconnectedness.
Exactly. And then they talk about paired drawing, where people respond to and build on each other's work, creating this kind of visual dialogue.
But even in those group settings, the book stresses how crucial it is to be mindful of individual boundaries.
Yes. There's that anecdote about respecting the physical distance people might maintain for a reason. A reminder that we need to be sensitive to everyone's comfort levels and unspoken needs.
And, of course, there are practical considerations, too, especially when working with art materials in groups.
Things like making sure the water jars are stable or the paints don't get mixed up accidentally. It sounds simple, but those small details can really impact the experience.
Right, because if someone feels like they've messed up or caused a problem, that can take away from that sense of freedom and exploration we want to create.
Absolutely. Oh, and then there's the pass the paper activity where everyone works on a piece of paper while music is playing, and then when the music stops, they pass it to the person next to them.
That sounds so dynamic. It really embodies that flow of creativity and collaboration.
It's like a visual jam session. So, moving on, the book then delves into something that might seem a little less obvious at first: folklore and ritual.
Yeah, when we think about therapeutic approaches, folklore and ritual might not be the first things that spring to mind.
Right. But the book makes this really compelling case for their relevance. It starts by emphasizing that folklore isn't just about collecting old stories, it's about understanding their context, how they functioned in society, and the social realities they reflected.
It's like they're saying folklore is like a window into the human experience.
Right, totally. And the book breaks down the different roles folklore played, teaching history and wisdom, reinforcing customs, giving us relatable characters to understand ourselves, explaining the universe, providing entertainment. It even warned us of dangers and offered potential solutions.
It's like a cultural toolbox almost. And what's fascinating is how a traditional story or game can take on a whole new meaning when you use it in a creative therapy setting.
Like, the book gives the example of using a children's game, the Game of London, in a session to help develop gross motor skills.
That's so interesting. And there are even variations on the game, like Group London, designed to promote teamwork and cooperation.
And Beautiful Queen, the Italian version, which sounds like a gentler, more collaborative approach. They also talk about the classic game Stuck in the Mud.
You know, Stuck in the Mud, it seems like a simple chasing game. But the book points out how it can also touch on those feelings of being trapped or the need for release.
Right. And the added element of calling out SOS or release to be freed, that introduces another layer of communication and interaction.
It's like these games are working on multiple levels, addressing both physical and emotional needs.
Exactly. And then the discussion shifts to the role of storytelling and ritual in this context.
The book talks about storytelling being more than just entertainment. It's a way to share wisdom, to explore different perspectives, even to find comfort and solace.
And they emphasize the importance of allowing people to externalize their reactions to these stories through different creative mediums, whether that's discussion, visual art, movement, or acting.
And they talk about using traditional stories as a basis for guided fantasy, which sounds like such a powerful way to help people connect with those universal themes.
Like going on an internal journey through the lens of a hero's tale without the pressure of having to perform for anyone else. But the book is also careful to emphasize that when it comes to ritual, authenticity is key.
Right, it's about making sure that any rituals that emerge are organically connected to the therapeutic process and feel genuine to the people involved.
Exactly. There's this example where a group was pushed into a unity ritual that didn't resonate because they really needed a time for individual reflection. It's a reminder that ritual can't be forced.
And it's fascinating how even within the games, there are all these little details that support memory and development.
Like using pictures, mime, or sound cues to help people remember the rules, and how those can also help them develop other skills like pattern recognition, counting, and nonverbal communication.
It's like learning becomes this natural, integrated part of the experience.
It is. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's dive into the realm of music and sound. The book explores how music and sound can help us expand our potential. It focuses on how we can integrate a sense of form and rhythm into our bodies through direct experience.
And they start by making a distinction between simply hearing music and actively engaging with its core elements, like pulse, rhythm, and tune.
Yeah, it's about going beyond passive listening and actually feeling the music in your body. And they offer all these practical exercises for exploring those elements.
Like exercises where you rock back and forth to different pulses, or modify rhythms, or engage with action songs like pull the boat, push the boat.
They even use the toe song with body massage to explore syncopation. And can you believe they even use football and soccer chants to help people understand rhythm and intervals?
I know, it's so creative. And what really struck me is how they emphasize starting with free sounds like humming or grunting.
Right. Those unstructured vocalizations can be a much more accessible entry point for people who might find structured music overwhelming, especially those who maybe haven't had a lot of musical experience.
It's about finding a comfortable starting point. And they talk about how important organic rhythm is, that natural flow and pulse, rather than forcing a strict beat.
Yeah, it's about feeling the music, not just counting it out. And then they introduce these movement-based activities like the tile dance chorus and stepping stones to further integrate body and sound.
And plainsong, where the group sustains a drone and individuals add their own flights of sound and gesture. It sounds so beautiful and freeing.
It does. And they even talk about using cards with different pitches for group singing, letting people choose the notes they want to sing. It's all about creating multiple pathways for participation.
And then they get into exploring specific musical intervals, like the octave, organum, thumb fifths, and the minor third. It's really fascinating how they break down these building blocks of music.
And they even mention how the minor third can evoke feelings of sadness, which could make it helpful for processing grief or other somber emotions.
And then they have these more advanced explorations, like within the interval and keening, which sound like they can really push the boundaries of expression.
It's about deepening that connection between sound and emotion, but ultimately it all comes back to this idea of the body as a musical instrument.
Right. Tuning up the body through sound and movement as a foundation for communication and expression. And they introduce this really interesting concept of three-dimensional sound.
That idea that sound has depth and dimension, like smell and touch, it really expands our understanding of how sound can impact us.
So let's talk about drama. This section really starts by challenging that typical idea of drama being all about performing on a stage.
Right, it reframes drama as a potential tool for personal growth. They talk about how the process of engaging with drama through imagination, role-playing, and emotional engagement can have all these benefits.
Like becoming more adaptable, improving communication skills, and feeling more comfortable in social interactions.
Exactly. And they start with something as simple as name games, emphasizing how important they are for creating a sense of individual identity within the group, especially at the beginning of a session.
They talk about how these games offer a little moment of individual attention, a kind of spotlight,
Right.
but also how important it is to keep them lighthearted and non-threatening.
They give examples like the name train, which uses repetition to build group rhythm, and Dracula, which is a bit more playful and encourages eye contact and emotional expression.
But they also give some important cautions, like making sure the Dracula game doesn't actually scare anyone, especially younger children. It's that reminder to be sensitive to everyone's needs.
Absolutely. And then they talk about the Guardian of the Keys game, where one person guards the keys and others try to steal them.
That one sounds like it really sharpens auditory skills and strategic thinking.
Yeah. And adding things like a verbal taunt from the Guardian or a team of thieves trying to steal the keys makes it even more challenging and engaging.
Oh, and the magic newspaper game sounds amazing. The idea that a simple newspaper can become anything you imagine, and everyone will understand what it is.
I love that one. The book points out how it's also a great way to observe people's responses. Like, if someone keeps repeating the same action or seems hesitant to engage, that can give you insights into what might be going on for them.
It's like a window into their inner world, and then they move into the realm of guided fantasy.
Guided fantasy is presented as a way to tap into the power of imagination and explore different themes and emotions. They talk about how it can be active or non-directive, depending on the needs of the group.
And how it can be a really useful jumping off point for deeper discussions and self-discovery.
Exactly. And then they talk about the importance of creating characters, whether through storytelling or embodying a different persona.
They highlight how creating characters can help people connect words with emotions and break through creative blocks.
It's like by stepping outside of ourselves, we can sometimes access deeper levels of creativity and express things we might not otherwise feel comfortable sharing.
And then they talk about collaborative storytelling, like the group story activity where everyone contributes to a shared narrative.
That sounds like a great way to foster a sense of shared experience and build on each other's ideas.
And they mention variations like passing a soft ball to indicate who speaks next, or having a central actor who embodies the story as it unfolds.
It keeps everyone engaged and adds an element of spontaneity. And when it comes to improvisation, they talk about the gibberish exercise, which is fast-paced and adaptable for different groups.
It's all about that free-flowing, nonverbal communication and spontaneity. And then there's the who owned the bag exercise.
That one sounds really powerful. The idea of taking an old bag and imagining who might have owned it, describing their lives and personalities.
And the book emphasizes that whatever the person describes is right. that there are no wrong answers.
It's about letting those projections and interpretations come out and recognizing that they can tell us a lot about the person's inner world.
It's like a form of storytelling that reveals as much about the storyteller as it does about the imagined character.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some of the big takeaways that stand out to you from this book?
For me, it's that core recognition that creativity is a fundamental part of who we are, and that engaging with different art forms can be such a powerful way to address our needs, foster well-being, and connect with ourselves and others.
Absolutely. And the book really stresses the importance of context, of being sensitive to individual needs, and of honoring each person's unique expression within these settings. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
It's about recognizing that that creative spark exists within all of us, and that engaging with art can be just as vital to our health as diet and exercise.
And that brings me to a final thought for you, our listener. What if we started viewing creative expression as being just as essential to our overall health and well-being as physical activity or a balanced diet? How might that shift our approach to healthcare and our understanding of what it means to truly thrive?
That's a really powerful question to consider.
It is. It makes you wonder what the future of healthcare might look like if we embraced this idea of creative expression as a fundamental part of our well-being.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked some creative thinking and inspired you to explore the many ways art can enrich your life.
Until next time.